Let's see if it's gonna happen. Jaamil, connecting. Yes!
Hello.
Oh my goodness. Are you in Mexico? Where are you?
Yes, I am in Mexico. Actually, that's exactly where I am right now.
Wow. That's amazing.
I am in
Hello, everybody.
Mexico.
Um, Welcome to Checking In Artists from Around the World. My name is Ben Pryor. I'm the senior producer for Greyhound Theater. I am joined by Jaamil Kosoko, who is
Find my
so many
mic.
things. Oh my God, Sarah Jane is like, "Are you in Mexico also?" But like, are you
Everybody
actually?
be asking, am I in Mexico? I feel like, because Sarah Jane knows I like Mexico. So
I know Mexico. I'm like, Jaamil knows how to end up in these situations. Tell me you're silly though, and you're just giving us looks.
No, I'm actually in Mexico right now.
You
And because
are?
I just couldn't,
Jamil,
I
you
mean,
told me you were not going to go anywhere
I know.
until 2023.
Well, performatively.
You're performing. Okay, yeah, no, I'm reading your sunglasses now, and they're giving me rooftop.
Exactly. I'm on
Okay,
the roof. I'm just on my roof.
you're on the
Y'all,
roof.
y'all should know this back. This, this is
No,
the
but I don't.
same
You,
backdrop.
you are a mysterious creature. You are the chameleon. You
I
travel to
am.
different places, and you
I know.
disappear, and you reappear, and you do
I
all.
know. I mean that's how it used to be, boo. I don't know what's happening now.
Okay, so
Lord.
I want to slow down for a second and I want to
Uh-huh.
actually introduce you to people because maybe
Sure.
people don't know. And I want to give a minute of our background because it is robust. And so I think that I first met Jaamil and or knew of Jaamil, I want to say in 2007, 2008, something like that.
Yes,
I was
yes.
at Pentacle, which is an artist services organization in New York. Jaamil was working for Dance USA Philadelphia,
Yes, yes, yes,
correct, with Lois
yes.
Elk, and
Yeah.
performing in the work of Headlong Dance Theater, I want to say. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then we served on the board of Dance USA together. Is that right? Am I
We did,
remembering?
although I think we overlapped a little bit because I was working for Dance USA at the time. I think you were actually on the board at the time.
Okay.
It's now I'm actually on the board of Dance USA, but
I
I
see.
don't work for the organization anymore.
Okay, okay. And then what happened? I remember like once upon a, I remember I think when you did I don't know I remember having this feeling like Jaamil does every single professional development opportunity
Exactly.
is
Yes.
available in the field.
Exactly.
I remember having that memory. I was like, damn, this bitch really knows how to work it. He's like doing every single
Yes.
Jaamil
Yes.
Jaamil and then you moved to New York
Hmm.
and started working.
Well, went to DC first. Remember, had my little Michael Kaiser
With the Kennedy Center. Yes,
with
that
the
was
Guineas
what
in it.
provoked me to think you did a
Yes.
professional development session because you did that,
Exactly.
which
Yes.
we could do a whole other session on, maybe.
And then
Uh,
we did ICPP together.
right after you came to New York, then we did the ICP, which is the
Yeah.
Institute for Curatorial Practice and Performance.
The
We were
performance.
part of the first class of that,
Yep.
um, which was a trip and a joy.
Yes.
Um, and we're still we're on a text thread from that's been going
We
on
are. Oh
like
my God.
2012 or something with with a few of our classmates that I feel like you were
Oh
the one
my
who
God.
recently was like, wow, we've been talking to each other for like 10 years or something.
10 years. We had to celebrate like 10 years that we've known each other. At least
Yeah,
over 10 years, many of us. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But we've also been able to work together through American Realness. I got
Hmm.
to show some of your pieces. We got to do
Yeah.
that in at both at Abrams, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Back in the day, hashtag Negrophobia and Chameleon, right? Or
And
no,
seancers.
answers. Yes.
Yeah.
So look, I'm getting confused. Um, and 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 what? So Jaamil is also a poet.
Hmm.
and has published some books or
Some chapbooks and
yeah,
poems and, things here and there. Yeah.
in elaborate multidisciplinary performances. I want to hear a little bit uh, about the most recent work and kind of what's been happening with that and what's happened to that in relationship to COVID. But I just want to ask if there's any other ways that you also want to introduce yourself. And
Well, I just want to give some shout outs because Norchip Amire is on here. I see
all
Ty,
right,
I see, I mean, Sarah Jane Bells. I see Ty on here. I see Brian Osborne, Leone. I just have to give some shout outs to some folks because,
yes,
peeps
please,
are up in here. So,
please,
and Brandon Hawkins, it's hashtag Negrophobia, not
yes.
hashtag Negrophobia. Let's just get that straight. But yeah, I just wanted to just give some shout outs there. And Elliot Jerome Brown Jr. Yes.
Hmm.
So anyway, some kids, some friends are tuning in. So I just wanted to say hello. Shout out to everybody. Um but yeah, you asked a question, Ben. What were you asking me? I
Just if there's
forgot.
any other ways that you want to introduce yourself. You're a teacher. You're so many things.
A teacher. I am a professor, Ben.
Work
Okay.
at,
There is a difference
at Princeton,
at
among
Princeton
other
University.
places, right?
Thank you. Yes, I have an appointment coming up at, well, I don't know if I can say that, but I'll be at UCLA, maybe. I'm pretty sure I'll be at UCLA, in the fall. And then, yeah, then back at Princeton. So I kind of jump, coasts and teach a little bit. And yeah, I was really looking forward to being in LA this fall, and I don't know if that's going to happen, in
Right.
the physical sense, just 'cause shit be cray.
Now, can I ask you to say something for folks who might not know you about
Uh-huh.
like the sort of gist of your performance work and what drives that maybe and or what drives your work across disciplines?
Of course, I think at the core is a curiosity. There's a deep curiosity to also, there's a deep curiosity to sort of to break open certain forms, and as a result, I think certain realities and ways of like being and moving in the world. I think there's like this, there's this deep history of segregation in the US, and I personally don't feel, I've never felt the need to segregate my thinking or my practice. I feel like, we're in a moment where we need deep intersectional thought, and we need to be able to think cross-disciplinarily, transdisciplinarily.
Mhm.
And so as a result, my work takes many forms, but I do feel like with Chameleon, I've been able to really situate myself critically inside of a cosmology, and a sort of yeah, there's many different ways of working and allowing these sort of practices to exist alongside each other and sort of instigate and play with each other, and that's been really exciting for me creatively. A lot of people were speaking to the fact that, oh, you were able to pivot this project so fast. You you pivoted. But when I think about what Chameleon, at the core of what Chameleon is and was doing, has always been pivoting. We were in the practice of pivoting. Like that was the concept from the very beginning. Every time we found ourselves in a different environment, in a different country, it was about how do we adapt and create something that is responsive to the reality that we are in.
Mm,
So in that regard, taking the work and moving it onto this sort of online platform, that didn't feel like a huge shift because we were like the work was a deep investigation on what it means to be in constant shift and constant adaptation, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that something that evolved for you over the years? Like I don't know, I'm trying to think about, and I was thinking about this sort of coming into this conversation um, about the sort of trajectory from negrophobia to seancers to chameleon, and I don't know, just thinking about artists' body of work, the
Mhm.
evolution of ideas through various projects.
Mhm.
Are artists always making the same piece, which is not to suggest that that's what you're doing, you know, but I don't know, the toolbox of the artist tends to you know, I feel like there is such a thing that each
Yeah.
artist with, and I'm curious if this practice that evolved, you know, into chameleon is something that accumulated from having taken negrophobia and seancers to many different places, and the reality of kind of learning that just dropping it in maybe didn't work exactly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and can you say
Exactly.
more about that?
Yeah. I mean, as you know, work doesn't always translate.
Yeah,
That's just the reality. And I think, having had the ability to situate my work in so many different places around the world really taught me that there's a kind of mutation and transformation that needs to occur. The work needs to be alive. It needs to be responsive to the people that are in the room. Not some and people that are not within inside of the room, honestly, but a way of being, creating a responsiveness to the situation, to what is literally rising in the moment, and I think, seeing a lot of artists who work in contemporary performance, and being able to follow and chart certain artists as well over the course of several projects, that also taught me something about just being able to be a porous vessel, if you will, and honestly, it was interesting because while I was developing Chameleon, it was a way there was in developing Chameleon, I was also like trying to tour the previous work, seancers, while also, having to hire, a whole, a new creative team, essentially.
yeah.
And, that's not an easy, like, you don't just do that overnight. It takes months, if not sometimes years, to find the right collaborators that you want to build a relationship with.
Yeah.
And so it became a way of kind of seeing how people, how do we work together over the course of several months in different places, because it's a commitment that you're making, to be in a work, especially with certain artists who have a history of touring. You're not only signing up to make a project, you're signing up to rehearse the work, tour the work, premiere the work. It's a long-term relationship,
Be at the
essentially.
airport with each other, dinner with each other, lose the baggage with each other. Like, yeah,
See each other at some of your worst moments. You know what I mean? So you are creating kin, you're creating family in that regard. And so it was important for me in building that community, which essentially was really what all Chameleon was a kind of experiment in community building and growing community, honestly,
yeah,
a kind of international community of collaborators and thinkers and thought leaders and cultural, just amazing folk. So it's, I do have a grief in me now, around sort of not being able to fully kind of experience that,
yeah,
with this amazing group of people that I was able to come in contact with.
Yeah. And I want to just interrupt for a second
Sure,
because
yeah.
I'm sort of wondering if you can paint the picture of maybe not like the totality of work that went into it, but sort of what was ahead. I'm curious about, you were premiering at MPAC up in Troy, New York. You
Yeah.
were 2 weeks later, if even that, bringing it to New York City. I
Yeah.
know that you had a date in August with Tanz August in Berlin, but I imagine that there were other maybe performances along the way? I'm sort of curious about the life that was intended for the work and sort of where it
Yeah.
fits now and how you feel about it. And um, I do sort of want to drill into the MPAC, or drill into, I'd love to hear more about MPAC as well, in that I missed it, like I sort of tuned in for a moment, but it was during the workday. It was kind of early. I feel like, sort of looking back on it, I feel
Yeah.
like one of the first things that our field was like doing in what felt like a more muscular or like realized way. And like I just wasn't ready to like be there quite yet, like I don't know.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
In
I feel
terms of
you.
the way, I don't know, it just didn't sink in, and it was so like, obviously there was, yes, people are like, it was great, there was a New York Times article, there was a this, there was a that. I sort of like, I don't know, but
You
getting,
missed it.
I missed all the, so anyway, but I wonder if you can talk about sort of the life that was intended, or I don't know, you pick the order. I would
Yeah.
love to hear more about sort of maybe what that was, and if there are other ways that those idiots like me who missed it can still access pieces of it, and then I'm sort of curious, like, yeah, like what else, where else was this going, and how do you sit with that now?
Hmm.
Do you
Hmm.
anticipate being able to just kind of pick it up and do it again, or what happens? Maybe you can't even
Sure.
answer the question now, but
No, I can actually. And again, I think that has something to do with the deeper sort of conceptual reality of the work. It was around adaptation, around being, of the moment, of the situation. And so, with that, being able to have pivoted, quote unquote, so quickly
mhm.
allowed for a new way of thinking about my work, honestly, and how it can move and situate in the world now, in the current reality that we're all in, and for the unforeseeable future, who knows? But that was a critical point of making the work, was to, I think, for myself, really push my own humanity and to know what is possible now, and am I able to create something that kind of, forgive my French, but is able to kind of, rise above the pollution, for lack of a better way of putting it. And, I've never wanted to be the kind of artist that like puts shit out in the world just to like put something out in the world. Like, I want to have things that are moving for a reason, that are speaking to the criticality of the moment that we are in, and the brutal, just the brutal truth of the moment, of now, of today. And so as a result, I think Chameleon, the Living Installments, is doing that. It's a proposal in that. And so, yeah, there will be future showings. I don't think I can get into any detail, because you know how institutions want to be the first to, share their gig or whatever. But I will say that, and this is something that I'm grappling with, Ben, is like what it means to be working. Like, I'm very much still working. I'm
Right.
teaching, I'm doing
You're,
lectures,
yeah,
I'm still working, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I know that we're in a moment when a lot of people are not, and that is something that I'm just grappling with. And that's not to say that I don't need help. I still need resources, I need funding, I need support. I may not be as bad off as some of my colleagues
Right.
in the moment, because I did all that professional development, so many years ago.
Well, and you've been very strategic, I feel like, about the sort of multifaceted nature of your career, in a sense,
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
artistic pursuits. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That you are really on multiple tracks at once. For
Hmm.
example, Jamil was just in Pittsburgh in February with the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, who's an incredible here
Yes.
in Pittsburgh at the University of Pittsburgh. Don Lundy Martin, who runs the thing, is
Yes. Brilliant.
yeah, and so that was really interesting, right? Because we've been talking about trying to bring your work and do
Yeah.
things, and
And this,
meanwhile,
and they beat you too.
you had a whole other track going, and I was like, "What? You're coming in February? Like what?" But it was great,
Yeah.
and meanwhile, you're also teaching, and you're also
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
it's
I mean, it's that thing of, diversify your portfolio. I mean, that was one of the things. If I learned anything from Michael Kaiser, it was diversify your portfolio. You know what I mean? I was the only black thing in my class
mhm,
at the Kennedy Center.
yep,
And I remember, like, I mean, and there were some good pieces of information that he taught us. And the biggest thing that I took away, the largest takeaway, was diversify your portfolio. And I took that creatively, financially, in all realms. Have yourself embedded in multiple spheres.
yeah,
I mean, I think there's some strange, I don't know, rhetoric that moves through our industry, specifically in the dance industry or genre of performance. That's like, if you're a dance artist, you have to, like, that's all you can do or all you can be. And I've never agreed with, like, that's never made any sense to me. It's
sure,
never made any sense to me. And so I never found there to be any reason for me not to continue to express myself as a poet, as a filmmaker, as a performance maker, as a performer. I still like to do all of that stuff. I like working for other people. I don't do it so much anymore, but I like doing that.
sure,
So yeah, I've never been one to be on one track. I've
yeah.
I've always carried multiple tracks, as you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're working more because of COVID and because of what happened, or do you feel like I'm curious because I have experienced that in my own situation because of the pivot.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing this before COVID, and now I'm doing interviews on Instagram and
Hmm.
figuring out a whole programmatic structure for the institution I'm working with to continue.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's been a bit. It's felt incongruous, perhaps, to the rest of the world in some sense. I'm wondering what your experience of that has been, because I remember also the first we got on a happy hour together with our ICPP text
We
group, um,
did.
and you were really like, "I'm not going anywhere, and we're not going to do anything until 2025." I think you said 2023, but that was so. I was like, "Whoa, okay, wow!" Like, I don't know. It really struck me. I'm curious about.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't think we're gonna be touring a live piece until 23. That's my hunch. Because we still have to like Broadway has to open, sports, we have to figure out how the hell sports are happening. Like we have to figure out how these like for-profit performances
Yeah.
are going to take place in this country before we're able to go into the nonprofit. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe the two will happen, more parallel or alongside each other. But I think the reality is that, we have to figure out how folks are going to convene and what the rules of engagement are. I don't necessarily see anyone doing that work yet. I could be wrong. Do you guys have a
People are
plan
definitely.
for opening KST at this
We do not
point?
have a plan. currently. We're working on it.
Sure, yes.
It's on my to-do list. I attended an
Hmm.
APAC yesterday, I think, about different committees of people that have been creating sort of guides, because the reality of the situation, I got very disappointed in the webinar, because I really thought they were going to tell me you have masks and gloves and you get the emails and then you can do it, but it's
Hmm.
not like you have to create your own criteria, and you have to follow your local things, and so it's actually there's a lot of work involved in terms of figuring that out, and we're also not really trying to be the first. I feel in this situation, like we're we want to figure things out, but we're sort of, I don't know. Let's see what happens. We
Yeah.
have been talking about doing smaller scale things maybe in the fall, and maybe that's just like letting two collaborating artists into the space to have rehearsals, and maybe they do a performance that's live streamed, so maybe there's a total of 6 people that congregate in a space and potentially wear masks or what. It's like, I don't know, I don't have it all worked out exactly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but we're thinking about scenarios, and I don't want to get too far into them
Of
before
course, of
it's
course.
solved, because again, it's this thing of how much labor do we do, and then it doesn't work out, and
Exactly, exactly. Again, all I'm saying is we need to prepare for multiple waves
yeah.
of this thing. We need to prepare for what the in-between space is, you know. It doesn't make sense for, Zürich Moves to invite me over for an audience of 10 people,
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
especially for the rate that I'm asking for. So, live stream, no live stream, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
don't see Mark making that decision, you know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, I'm planning for 23, and I'm in a strategic planning process right now. I'm working with some amazing folks. Just going to shout out, some folks, Christy at Akron,
Mm.
Ebony Noel Golden with Betty's Daughter Art Collective, um, and a couple other folks that I'm in conversation with. But my team, we're doing basically an internal audit right now. We're like turning inward. We're really mining our resources. Doing a kind of asset management sort of critical study internally,
Mm.
and that will help us, essentially know how we are going to move forward, and, the kinds of projects that we want to take on, as we move into the future. But I don't see myself, honestly, like getting in front of a room full of people for at least 2 years. I need to see how this thing behaves, yeah, just what that choreography is before I put
Sure.
myself on the front lines in such a
Yes.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah. No, that's great. What something had just popped into my head. I don't know if it was this, but this is another thing.
yeah.
Um, Going back to the chameleon, the living installments.
Hmm.
I want to, like, is there a way I can see any of it? You made this whole film at MPAC
I did.
from
It's really beautiful too, actually.
it, because I did tune in. The like one moment, I forget what was happening. I was like on a Zoom call or something, and somebody texted me, or maybe it was the ICPP group. Somebody started being like Jamil, and I was like, oh, because I was like, couldn't really engage
Yeah, yeah.
happening during the day. I have this meeting, but I tuned in for a second, and it was the head in the TV moment, which I feel
Oh, yeah.
such a kind of visually strong, striking, poetic thing. And yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
Wondering
I
if
have to shout out that was the well. I think we came to that idea together, but my co-director Ima Doze was really brilliant, and yeah, and some of the visual reality or surreal, images that were positioned in the film, and Yeah, it's a beautiful work. I'm shout out to the Wexner, to Impact, but I'm still working with the Wexner to finish the project. Because what we showed on Earth Day was basically a 10-minute excerpt of what is probably a 25-minute film.
Okay.
So there's a lot more to that work, but I'm still, I'm playing with how I want to release it. I'm like, do I want to put it on iTunes or something? And just like, I'm like, I think there's enough of an audience because I'm really trying. Like, I have to live. I have to figure out how the hell I'm gonna live
Yeah.
as an artist in a COVID reality, and
Yeah.
so that's gonna mean making some nonprofit decisions. I'll put it that but yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I have to, get my LLC together, and I just have, there's work to be done, and I'm taking this time to do it, so that when the time comes to pivot again, I will be ready and able to go back into the world. But I think, honestly, Ben, I was very tired. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot
Yeah.
of labor
Yeah.
touring
Oh yeah.
internationally for several years, I mean, again, Nora, who I adore, I love that woman. I don't know how the fuck she does it. Like, how the hell do you stay on the road for 50 weeks out the year? I just don't understand that. And so I imagine that this thing has hit some folks harder than it has others. For
For sure.
me, I was planning a big, summer in Berlin. I was supposed to be working with B12 and Trauma Bar and Kino, Ponderosa, Tanz and
Well,
August, like all like I was having a whole Berlin summer, and all these projects were lined up. I had like work for 3 months lined up,
well,
and it all like fell apart. And so I'm just sort of like, but it's not the end of the world. But I'm grateful that I was able to sort of reimagine the project in such a way so that at least I have something that I can offer, if only the film. Um,
right. You doing that? Like, is Tons of August doing some sort of virtual presentation or something like
I
that,
can't
or any?
confirm or deny that. You have to ask Virve. You trying to get all this
I,
content out
I
of
don't know.
me.
I'm just asking. You know, I'm nosy. I want to know what's happening.
You gotta ask them what they do. But if they do something, I hope I'm a part of it.
Hmm.
I hope. Um, but all to say, like, no contracts have been signed.
I
You
see.
know,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I will
So
follow up with you about the
yeah,
film.
just DM me.
Uh, uh-huh. Yeah. Uh,
But yeah.
now, did you you asked me if you should prepare anything, and I told you it was up to you, and so I wanted to ask if you had prepared anything or not, which is fine if it's the case.
Um, I mean, I prepared my look.
Good. You look fantastic.
I tried to prepare this stunt for
That's great.
you.
You're
I hope
lovely.
this is
No, no,
enough.
no. Don't take that as shade. I was just offering an opportunity for you to come forward with more magical morsels for our viewers.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess I will say that, I've been thinking about this time very critically, and as I said, I'm doing an internal audit for my company. I'm also
yeah.
doing an internal audit of my spirit. And I'm really looking at, my trauma, my issues, yeah, I'm using this as an opportunity to really do some deep spiritual work that I've been kind of putting off for the past several years because I was so busy trying to perform, internationally
Yeah.
celebrated artists or something. And I feel like in the midst of that, I lost a bit of myself, just at the pace at which I was moving.
Sure.
It was incredibly fast. And so now that I have some time to just sit my ass down, be still, I am doing some of the work that I've needed to do. And then, it's been intense, I mean, just yesterday I received word that my dear friend Marcus White, transitioned,
Yeah.
sending, so much love to his family and friends and loved ones. But that really hit me, and so I'm just having to deal a lot with, continued grief, intersectional grief,
Mm,
anticipatory grief, and just how, like, and literally what it means to just be a carrier
mm,
of all of that in this moment,
mm,
of global crisis. It's just it's a huge ask, and I don't see enough conversations, specifically in the art and culture community, around the steps of reopening, as and when I say this, I mean, like, literally, how are we going to take care, like, how are we taking care of artists to prepare them for making work again, to be in the public, because we talk about themes of essentiality and who's essential in this moment. Art is incredibly essential. I don't think it's being called that yet, but you don't
mm.
have, you don't have tourism in New York City without Broadway. You don't
Sure.
have the restaurant industry without, art and culture. You don't have the kind of creative economy and currency without art. And so, there's this thing that I realize, in making Chameleon, so much of the work that we're doing is cloaked, right? Like, under this brown material.
Oh, you mean
And
like, yeah,
yeah, literally.
literally.
And
I
literally.
was saying metaphor. I was like,
But
yes,
no,
yes.
but I'm gonna take it to the metaphorical plane now.
Right.
This is the work I'm doing for you. Now watch this theoretical gymnast unfold for you right now, okay? But what I realized, because so much of what that metaphor, that sort of embodied metaphor, was of cloaking this kind of invisibility, if you will, as a means to amplify or magnify, you
Yeah,
know, to show parts of the body that is oftentimes maybe invisibilized or unrecognizable or looked over, whatever. And so, and I think that's what, Covina has done. Essentially, she's kind of thrown this cloak
mm,
over all of this sort of disinvestment, the sort of just all the shit. That's the only way I can put it. Like, she's cloaked all of that in order to magnify and visibilize all of these realities that have been so often marginalized and thrown onto the fringe and made unrecognizable. Now we see it, so we can't move back into, business as usual without acknowledging the numerous injustices that are embedded in every part of our lives, really. Like,
yeah,
there's just no way, like, if you can come out of this thing and not be woke, then there's a problem. There's a
yeah, yeah,
problem,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know like, there's a serious problem. And then I think there comes this question that we have to really do some work, as Christina Sharp says in her essay, lose your kin,
Mm,
but quite frankly, lose your can. Because it's like, you don't need to be messing with folks. Like, I feel like, you've been like, what I love about our relationship is that it's been lovely to kind of see your evolution as a thinker and a curator, and as someone who has grown more conscious to the varying themes of injustice that plague our society, and to see how that becomes a part of your programmatic proposal and duty,
Yeah.
And so I think this is the task that honestly a lot more curators need to take on. There's the role of doing your work. You go to work, you do your job as a programmer, whatever, but then there's your second job, and we don't oftentimes talk so much about our second job, that invisible job that now has been cloaked and made more visible and made more real, and you can't ignore it anymore. You can't ignore your second position,
Yeah.
as a cultural leader. You just
Yeah.
can't ignore that anymore. If and you hypothetically, but if you were previously, you just can't move forward in your work and continue in that same way. And so that's, if anything, I think that is what's really exciting for me when I think about the possibility of what's to come is a more democratic um, proposal and a more just proposal for how we engage with each other as
Yeah.
artist citizens
Yeah.
inside of this cultural landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to call out more specifically this tending to the spiritual garden, because that is a piece of your away message.
Yep.
Um, I remember the first time I think I got that, and I was like, "Work, bitch! Like you, you said it. Like, no, I'm not here for you and your little invitation or like whatever."
No, I.
That's the like that's
Yeah.
not the tone that comes
Yeah.
across at all.
Yeah.
But it really like um, simply and with such like poetry and gravity kind of grounds the reality of the situation and the need, right? This like to sort of, you know, as somebody who's like doing my little work emails and like to kind of, I feel like it successfully broke through that
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is like poetic and like human and also kind of humorous and truthful,
Yeah.
in the reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, bringing it back to nature with the reality of like tending a garden and my during COVID, I have become a plant daddy more and more.
I know. I'm so
I've,
happy for you.
I've been getting, I got my orchid the other day. This baby is coming back to life. I'm here with my
Yes.
bird of paradise next to me.
Yes. And
Cute
there's a
little,
whole situation happening in your backyard.
and then in the front yard,
Oh,
actually,
that's the
yes.
front yard. Okay.
I, there was a garden plant this weekend that's going to continue.
Yes.
That's
Yeah. Tell us more about this garden planting. Uh,
just some, I forget what they're, zinnias. I have some zinnias, and I have some little blue things that I forget what they're called. But
nice.
friend of mine has come and helped me
Yes.
plant a garden, and I'm gonna continue going because it's been I don't know, it's like been a beautiful experience to go outside, before I really go into office mode and get out there
Yes. 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 Yes.
and water the plants and see them grow each day. And it's such a sort of simple thing, but it's, I don't know, it's really feeding me in a lot of ways currently. And I just appreciate the way that you, sort of present both a kind of metaphor, but also like a literal reality that someone like me is able to like um, check themselves and also like be benefited by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um,
I mean, it's beautiful. Thank you for acknowledging it. And, you're not the only person to kind of, tell me that away message kind of it stirred something, and just being aware. And honestly, I have to give props where props is due. Like, again, as I said, I'm working with Ebony Noel Golden, and she's someone who I look to quite often for guidance, in a number of ways, spiritually. Ooh, that's the window that
Uh-oh.
just closed on me. I don't know how I'm gonna get back inside now. Um, anyway, we'll deal with that later.
Uh-oh.
That window
Uh-oh.
just closed it. Um,
Uh-oh.
uh-oh. But yeah, anyway, it's nice to know that, people are not only getting the message, but getting the message. And it's important, that we take that time, and what gardening does, because I've been a skeptic for a while, just in that I don't have a green thumb anywhere on my body. I have nothing green. Like, I've just, things die. I haven't been in the practice of keeping life, because my life did not allow me to keep life in my
Mm,
apartment in such a way. I was like, Airbnb, just, a plant, a garden. That was a kind of responsibility and commitment that,
yeah.
I'm like, I have to go in the world. I'm supposed to be in Brussels right now. I have no time for a garden. But now I do
Yeah.
have time for a garden. And I want to
Yeah.
lean into it. I want to lean into that beauty, into that intimacy, and that self-nurturing that comes with tending to a garden, whether it be spiritually, whether it be quite literally. But
Yeah.
that is the work that I'm really excited about, that I can do now. I literally have space to, like, garden,
Mm,
and I'm literally living for
good.
my plants now. So yeah.
Um, well, Jamil, this has been lovely. People are concerned about your window.
Oh, they
As
really?
somebody's like, go check the window. And I'm
I'll keep you
and
posted.
it's been almost 50 minutes, so I feel like we should maybe wrap up. As much as I'd love to sit here all day with you, and or really be in Mexico with you,
I
having
know.
cocktails on the
I
beach.
know. Hey, let's put a rain check on it. All right. Let's
Mm-hmm.
make that happen. It might be 5 years from now,
But we'll do it.
but we'll
Cocktail.
do it. All right. Cocktails in Mexico. All right. I love you, Benjamin Snap
I love
Pryor. Thomas
you.
Benjamin Snap Pryor.
Thank you for doing this, everybody. This has been Checking In Artists Around the World. This is Jaamil Olawale
Yes.
Kosoko. Can you tell us how we can follow you, how we can contribute to you? What's your Venmo? What's your all your things?
Yeah, like, you can just go to Jaamil.com, Jaamil. Let me just put it down here real quick. Um, yeah, and just scroll right on down, and all of my payment options are there. I have Cash App, I have Venmo, I have PayPal, and I'm just like, if you feel it, throw a dog a bone. But yeah, it's it's intense. I need to figure out this window though. I'm a little nervous now.
Okay.
Um, Anyway, but yeah, Jamil.com. And yeah, thank you
Thank,
all so much for tuning in.
thank you.
I love you, Benjamin.
Love you, Jamil.
All
Thank you for the
right.
time.
Thank
Please send us an
you.
update about the window, and we can share with our followers and or tell me if I need to call people in Philly to come get you. We're,
Exactly, right. We might have to call somebody. I'm on the roof. Call the Pope. No, but don't call the police.
oh,
But
do not.
maybe like a fireman. Maybe a fireman can help me.
Who knows? Something.
Yeah.
Well, we'll
All
talk.
right. Ooh, it's a long way down too.
Uh-oh.
I don't think that. I don't know what I'm gonna do. All right. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye.